Education is how we build the pillars of our next generation. But education today looks different than it did before the pandemic. It also looks different than it did just a year ago.
We were hearing reports of educators really struggling.
This week, we explore how new technologies are shaping our kids' futures and how school districts across the country are working to mend students' troubled pasts. This is The Race. Welcome to The Race. I'm Dan Grossman. It's been 3 years since the pandemic started, but we're still learning new information on just how impactful it was on the mental health of our kids. We're also seeing how school districts across the nation are coming together to support their students. There's a metaphor in the halls of our nation's schools about how the moments of commotion and turbulence in between class.
I still struggle with anxiety every day, and the pandemic didn't help with that at all.
Mirror the inner narratives of many of the students who filled those hallways.
I kind of just felt like hopeless. I feel like there was a lot of times where it looked like it was getting better, and then it just seemed like it got worse.
Casey, Zakish, and Riley are not alone when they say they felt the mental weight of COVID-19. According to a 2022 study from the CDC, 37% of high school students experienced poor mental health during the pandemic. 44% said they felt persistent hopelessness. 20% said they had seriously considered suicide, and 9% said they had attempted to take their own life. Numbers all higher than they were the year before.
We had family deaths because of COVID. I was also going through chronic pain issues that I still have, and so it felt very isolating and debilitating to just be by myself, and it felt like no one understood me.
It's why we wanted to sit down with these three to better understand what they have been dealing with.
It's hard to see that, and it's hard we want to help, but we can only help so much, right?
And how educators like Tara Smith have created innovative solutions to help.
Definitely have seen kids be able to open up more, have those connections, and not be afraid to seek that help.
Advocate,
Alongside social worker Connie Aguero, Tara has been teaching a course called Sources of Strength, a suicide prevention class dedicated to building resiliency among students. It's just one of the many options their school district in Colorado has offered to address the growing student mental health crisis in our country.
When I got out of graduate school, the idea of school-based mental health was kind of a mystery or an unknown for most people. They didn't understand why there'd be mental health in schools, and now it's in a lot of districts front and center.
Steve Netterveld is the director of mental health for the Cherry Creek School District. Their district, which has increased its mental health budget by $1.5 million over the last year. It's a drop in the bucket compared to the $1 billion Congress has dedicated to districts nationwide as part of the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act announced in October. The money will help fund initiatives similar to Sources of Strength over the next 5 years.
What we're learning from students is more prevention and more social emotional learning is what they're asking for. So instead of waiting for a crisis to happen or a student really struggling, we're doing a pilot to see if we can screen all of our students just on a social emotional level of what are they learning, what are they asking for, and can they identify somebody in school that they'd go to if they needed help for some reason.
Tara and Connie are already seeing the impact.
Last year when we had graduation, we were so excited to see the girls graduate. And I mean, we had one that was going, she's actually going to be a psychologist, and I tell her all the time that she'll one day be my boss, but that's okay.
And so are students who have learned a lesson no book could have taught them.
The person I am today, I couldn't have been this person if it weren't for the pandemic, because the way that life changed so suddenly really makes you ask yourself, what do I value in my life? What are my priorities? And what am I going to do to get there?
This is not a book report, but it is a 91-page complaint filed by Seattle Public Schools accusing social media companies for creating a mental health crisis among its students. A crisis, this says, that is taxing their mental health resources, and it is asking for compensation.
It is a national youth mental health crisis, and unfortunately it's impacting everyone.
Dean Kawamoto is a partner at the law firm representing Seattle Public Schools in its lawsuit against Meta, ByteDance, Snap, and Google.
I mean, this is something that the social media companies are well aware of. They are aware of the harm that their programs are causing. And from the Seattle Public Schools standpoint, and as alleged in their complaint, because these companies are not acting, they feel they need to.
The complaint points to increased rates of youth depression and suicidal ideation and accuses the companies of promoting topics like dangerous diets or content that encourages self-harm.
The problem is that this is diverting resources. It's diverting time.
We've reached out to the tech companies and heard back from two. In response to the suit, Google spokesperson Jose Castaneda said to us, quote, "We have invested heavily in creating safe experiences for children across our platforms and have introduced strong protections and dedicated features to prioritize their well-being." And while ByteDance's TikTok said it won't comment on litigation, it did send examples of its age-restricted features, break reminders, access to support resources, and parental controls.
Social media affect many of the factors that we know are heavily influencing our mental health, but it's definitely not the full story.
Lucia Magus-Weinberg is an assistant professor of psychology at the University of Washington who specializes in adolescent youth mental health and researches the impact of social media.
Is it really that social media is perhaps causing symptoms of anxiety or depression? Or could it also be the case that perhaps young people who already have symptoms of depression, of anxiety, of body image concerns, are they using social media in perhaps different, more harmful ways?
Since the 1980s, Magus-Weinberg says researchers globally have been seeing an alarming rise in depression, anxiety, and suicidal thoughts in young people.
We know that adolescents who might have already symptoms of depression might go to these platforms and engage in more social comparison.
However, in her research, she says that young people can find support on social media in healthy ways that they might not be able to find elsewhere in their social or familiar circles. Regardless, she believes a change in the business model or more government regulation on platforms could be beneficial.
All our interactions are in commercial platforms, right? And all of our interactions are being monetized. We are asking social media to rethink their business models when it comes to young people.
Seattle is not the only district to file suit against the platforms. Nearby Kent School District, also in Washington State, made a similar filing. Vanessa Mashanya, Scripps News, Seattle.
College campuses are more than just a place to learn. They're where many technological innovations take place. We'll take you to one campus where students are exploring how artificial intelligence could help people who are visually impaired.